They took a PR stance of like, we're going to be first movers and we're going directly to our customers to say, this is not okay. And that's what I'm fascinated about. It wasn't just like, hey, we're going to give you a slap on the wrist. It was like, we're going straight to the source of your customers. And now all of a sudden there's this battle between who are you more loyal to? Are you more loyal to this third party company or are you more loyal to this PMS? Because it's
so good.
Potential that the PMSs loses customers over this.
This is so cool.
Isn't it fascinating?
Welcome to another episode of Dental Rift. I'm your host, Gary Bird. I am the CEO of SMC National. We provide predictable new patient flow for your dental offices.
I am the CEO and founder of Unify. We are a dashboard that helps bring all of your different tools in your dental offices together to make your lives easier for your team members.
Ooh, I like that one. That's the best one I've heard so far.
Oh, good. I like that. Yeah, I'm trying to just simplify that, man. It's so difficult for me. I love to ramble.
Oh yeah, of course. Yeah. How do you say, how do I do an elevator pitch in 15 minutes, right? And with a presentation deck. So I love that. Well, Tanner, you sent me a text today and you said, "Hey Gary, have you seen this?" And I was like, "No, I haven't." And I'm literally teeing it up to post what you sent me on social media. And you were like, "But don't share it." And I was like, "Oh, are you serious?" And he's like, yeah, I want to share it. And then I want to talk about it. So what can you share with us about that text that you sent us today?
Yeah, so we'll get into that in a little bit, Gary. I'm curious though, first, you guys just hosted something huge over this last week, and I was fortunate enough to be able to attend, but I'm kind of curious from your perspective, like how did it go?
Okay, so we did
first boot camp.
We did. So we had our first ever Dental Marketing Manager Bootcamp, first of its kind, where we're actually working with dental marketing managers. And that might be a dentist who's managing their own marketing, or an ops person that's managing their own marketing, or a marketing manager that's managing their marketing. We had 104 people attend. 20 of those were vendors, 20 of those were SMC teams. So we had about 64 people that were representing the offices. And we had about right over 1,000 offices. I kind of tallied it up between all the different groups, 1,000 offices that were represented there. And so it went really, really well. I was nervous for the first one. The feedback that we've gotten has been amazing. Our NPS score is through the roof. We had only like one unhappy person that was like, "Hey, I didn't like it." And everybody else has been tens. The biggest criticism that I've gotten, there's two that were consistent, was not enough chairs. We try to cram too many people into a tight space. And number two was we should have done 2 days. They were like, you crammed too much information into one day. You should have done 2 days. So yeah, overall, it was a success. We already have people signed up for next year. I already know it's going to be like 3x the size next year. I can just fill it. And so yeah, overall, it was a win.
That's awesome. Give us some behind the scenes, though. I'm curious from your personal perspective, like where were your personal criticisms and kind of what you thought of it?
So number one, we have to have standing tables in the back because I can't sit for 8 hours a day and just sit there and learn that way. Like we need to make it more flowing, need to make a bigger room so people can move around. Number two, the vendors were great, but we needed to put them more in a winning spot. We kind of put them where the food was, and we thought that would be enough traffic, and definitely could do a better job there. Number three is we need to have more. Now, I thought we did a really good job of making it super tactical and that it would be too boring. Like if we made it more tactical, it would have been super boring, but that's what people want. So next time it's going to have more hands-on workshops of like here. And we did this, like how to build out your avatar. Here's a worksheet, go and do it. Build your avatar, build your buying personas, just doing more of that. That's what people really want. And so those would be the biggest things.
I've got an idea for you for next time.
Yes.
It just kind of came to my mind. So you could this would be total garbage. Like I've never even expressed it, right? What if you did where all of these attendees, you allowed them to submit kind of like their creative methods of marketing that they've done that's been successful for them or whatever. Sift through those and kind of get like the coolest, like top 5, top 10, and give them the opportunity to get on stage and just kind of chat briefly about it and then open it up for questions, because now you're totally building a community of, hey, I'm not like this person's also an expert that's come up with these creative ideas, et cetera.
I love that. Yeah, no, the networking, like getting people around each other with different ideas. I think that's a great idea. I think those are the kind of things that we have to do more of, and just letting the community kind of do the legwork. So we are launching a mastermind And we are launching a Slack channel. So that all launches this month and going into next month. And how you get into those is by coming to the boot camp. So I'm gonna keep taking all these ideas. I love that feedback. I think that's great. And the other thing I want to do, Tanner, is I want to do breakout sessions for pedo versus ortho versus specialty versus DSO, because we had a big DSO there that had 300, 400 locations, and they were like, this is amazing, can you do one just for us next time? So I think just to keep adding wrinkles of, look, here's the everybody stuff that we need to focus on, and then here's the specialized stuff for you to below. The other thing that we're going to launch next year based off of this and the feedback that we got is in a partnership that we have, is we're going to do a create, convert, and close for specialty for all in four. So it's going to be full arch, create, convert, close. And we're going to teach people how to actually close the cases before they come into the office. So there's a way that you can actually get these full arch people qualified for treatment and get them to have the money in hand before they even walk into the office. So we're building that out, and we're actually making that work for a couple of our clients. And we're gonna try to take that to the moon next year.
We need to bring, I think I mentioned this to you at the event, but I'll throw it on here too. We need to bring on Brian Kaleo to chat about that. I had a conversation with him where I brought that up kind of in passing, and he was very passionate about the marketing around All in Four. So it'd be interesting to bring him on and kind of, especially now that you're passionate about it, maybe in a different direction, to hear you two kind of duke it out.
I'd love to. Yeah. What was his thoughts? Where does he stand on it?
Oh, he's completely like, there's so many people doing it in not just like the gray area, but the black area of this marketing, where he's like, there's lawsuits coming, like there's a huge issue. And so I think that if you're going to prop up the marketing side of it with his background of like, hey, what's legal, what's not, et cetera, it'd be interesting to hear kind of how you guys go at it and think about it together. That's
awesome. I love that. Yeah, that's great.
I'll reach out to him and see if we can get him on.
Yeah, that would be amazing. So what do you, I have an article here that's fascinating. And I want to cover all that, but do you want to go into your, mine is around people not accepting dental treatment because of inflation, that the ADA is recently, someone sent me an article that they wrote on this. So, but if you want me to go first,
let's save that PMS thing for the last, and let's jump into this.
Okay. Yeah. Cause your PMS thing that you texted me, that's mind blowing. That I cannot believe that they're leaving a paper trail for that. Like that to me is huge. Oh, the other thing. So we posted recently, that we want to get Practice by Numbers, Dental Intel, and Jarvis on a podcast and get them in the same room. So I know Jarvis or Practice by Numbers said yes. They gave me their email. You're working with Dental Intelligence. Has Jarvis touched base with you?
We need to reach out directly to Jarvis. And then we also had a request to bring in EDMS. So EDMS is a newer one. And as I've gone through and done them, EDMS has an incredible product. They just haven't done a good job of branding and marketing themselves.
Who is that? I don't know who that is.
That's exactly right. That's why we need to bring them on. So they're a Canadian-based company. They've done an amazing job. The founder is a developer, right? So he's not a salesperson. He's not a marketer. He's not going to get out there and get really flashy and everything. But his integrations into the PMS, and therefore kind of the complexity of what he's able to provide with data and stuff, it's incredible. And so he's kind of been the back pocket secret for a lot of these large DSOs because he's done a lot of custom work. He's not off the shelf like a lot of these other players. And so he doesn't get a lot of publicity, but he does have a great product. And he thinks about it very uniquely in the industry too, compared to all of the other competition.
Let's get him on. Let's get the 3 scheduled, and hopefully Jarvis. I saw Jarvis got tagged in a bunch of the posts. So if they're busy or not, or I don't know. I
might reach out to Steven directly too. He was with Jarvis.
Okay, cool. And then I want to do another PMS one as well. I want to launch another PMS podcast because I have tons of people asking me questions, and that's gotten the most views of all of our content. And I don't think there's any roadmap really helping people pick a PMS, but between each other.
That's interesting too. Having people there would be interesting, but that's something that we're tackling with Unify Industry as well. So
I know I'd
love to be able to kind of tackle a little bit deeper on that from a tactical standpoint that maybe the CEOs may not be best to address. But
Maybe we bring
regardless,
in.
I would love to have them on them.
Yeah, maybe we can bring them
Yeah.
in and do a little more. Like, I know you're working on it, but how do we do the spear of that, right? The tip of that feeds into what you're doing at Unify. Because I think we went really high first time. Now, how do we take a step down? And then I think Unify kind of solves it at the next level down. Okay, let me read this really quick. Nearly 50% of Americans are delaying oral health care due to inflation. Becker's Dental Review reports a new survey indicates that inflation is not only affecting Americans' wallets, but their oral health. The Delta Dental Institute commissioned communication company to conduct a survey on Americans' relationships to oral health, which was released on December 7th. And they surveyed 1,321 adults and found that the respondents wanted to prioritize oral health, but nearly half of them delayed care due to the inflation situation that we see right now. So how
not surprised at all by that.
No, not at all. But how I interpret that is from like a practical level, my food bill's gone up to here, my gas bill's gone up to here, all my other basic, things that I need for my house has increased. And so I need to cut something. And so I'm going to punt my oral health. I'm going to skip my hygiene appointment. I'm not going to get the treatment that I was planning on getting, and I'll get it done next year.
Yeah, I think that in addition to that, what we're seeing, and we've discussed this quite a bit too, is that another huge trend that we're seeing in dental is this like no-show or same-day cancellation problem, right?
Yeah.
I think these go hand in hand.
That's part of it. No, they go hand in hand.
That's
absolutely
exactly right.
Yeah, it's
they're not showing up, and
stink! I got this appointment, and I don't have the money to afford it, so I'm not going to go.
Yes, and I think that the offices that have done a good job of doing treatment planning trainings within their teams will thrive during this time, because a lot of I think the default treatment planning process is to talk about financials, but almost essentially kind of ignore it, right? Like, here's what you'll owe, and then we'll move on and get you scheduled. Not like, hey, here's what you owe. Do you want to do any of these other financial options?
Yeah, and having a roadmap, right? That's what it really boils down to. I mean, think about the car industry. The car industry is in existence right now to the level that it is because they figured out how to, in good or bad, like however you think about it, they figured out how to talk about your monthly payment rather than how much you're paying for a car. So they'll figure it out. They'll help you get that car. Can you afford $200 a month? Can you afford $300 a month? And then let's go find a car that fits that. Dental has never worked on that way. It never looked at that way. And most offices only have a paper options, meaning they only have Care Credit, and Care Credit only serves a very small market. There's a lot of people who have 610 or 620 or 630 credit scores that need to get serviced, and they just can't because they've never even thought of their dental treatment that way.
Yeah, and that is completely true. When I was the COO of our DSO, it was not something that I thought a lot about was, hey, we need to have a variety of patient financing because our case acceptance was still so high that, again, we didn't focus on needing to go in and like digest or intersect kind of these smaller iterations of treatment case acceptance. But now with the increase of all these costs associated with them, yeah, I mean, you've got to go in and kind of get really detailed and granular of how can we treatment plan or present treatment better. And that includes different financial different financial options for the patients, for sure.
This is why I think that 2023 is going to be the year of the dental marketer, because what's going to happen is you have patients coming in, you used to make this much money, now you're making this much money with the same amount of patients. You're also overpaying for staff. So the inflation hit the salaries of the staff as well. And now you're going to say, oh, time to turn on marketing. We got to get new patients in. We have to, because we have to close this gap somehow. And then when you pull that lever to start your marketing and it doesn't work, that's when heads are going to roll, or you're going to be the hero.
Yeah, that's interesting. Because yes, I think that the default is going to be that dental marketing. But based off of this conversation, I'm almost like, maybe the emphasis needs to be the treatment planning and the presentation of finances more, right?
That's going to be a big part of it.
People ignore that a lot, but yeah. Let's talk about this whole PMS thing, right? I want to set a little bit of the background and backstory.
Yes.
For those kind of our listeners that are non-technical, I'll try to dumb this down as much as possible, but that's not always my strength, right? So when you have a third-party company that integrates with your PMS, there's multiple ways to integrate, to pull data, and then also, depending on the program that you're working with, push data back into the platform.
So
right?
let me just give an example. So if you have a PMS, let's just make up one. Let's say you're Open Dental, and then you work with SMC. We will then integrate with Open Dental, so that way we can send marketing information in and then pull marketing information out, so we can actually see what's going on from a marketing perspective.
Right. So you're pushing and pulling data. So the structures of how to do that, if you were to go in and push and pull data with software outside of dental, the standard is what you call an API, right? So an API is something where it says, hey, this is how we want you to pull data or push data into our platform. And the protocol of the API is established by the software developing company, right? And so then all these other third-party companies, if they want to push and pull data, they'll go into the API and pull it out, et cetera. If you go back and look at the early stages of PMSs, nobody built these APIs at these early stages of PMSs. And so third parties, what they would do is they would go and build direct integration with the data. And that's a very dangerous thing, because now you're pushing and pulling data directly from the database, and it sets it up potentially for a lot of issues and problems if you don't structure your program well, right? So dental has been built on direct integration into the database, even though industry standard would absolutely, I mean, if you got outside of dental, like they would die that exists. PMSs have been very slow to build API structures because of the fact that, hey, everyone's already doing it this other way. Like, I don't want to go in and build this if no one's going to use it. So fast forward to the last 5 years or so, as we've seen a lot more cloud-based softwares, one of the issues that people say with cloud-based is, oh, it's so closed, I can't use any of these third-party programs, right? Well, the real reason is because you don't have direct access to the database. When your PMS is in the cloud, the database in which all of your data for that software is housed is now in a third-party location that you don't even have access to. Only the company that built the PMS has access to it. Right. So now they say, okay, now that you can't directly connect to the database, you have to go through our approved ways of getting data. Again, the API is the preferred method, and you're starting to see that a lot with these PMSs, but it's still not as robust for some of these softwares. Right. So what happens is people are now getting, when I say people, I mean third-party softwares, are getting creative about how they're going to pull data out of PMSs. All right, so this is the juicy part of where Gary kind of alluded to earlier. There have been a lot of times in the past where through these kind of gray areas of how to connect to data, which is directly through the database, these PMSs have blocked third-party companies from accessing their data because they're not paying an appropriate fee, right? And that's in itself a huge conversation that we could talk about in a long time, right? Who owns the data? Is it the office? Or is it the PMS? And does the PMS have the right to charge these third parties to access this data? Right. So that's something that we could go down that whole road and have a conversation about. But ultimately,
and what they'll do is they'll say, oh, no, we're not going to let this person have access. We're going to give our internal team. So if you want this access, you should just use our product that we have.
There's that. And there's also, okay, well, if you want access, we're going to charge you to get access now. Mm-hmm. Right. And so I had a friend that reached out to me last week that was sitting there complaining about specific PMSs and how they couldn't integrate because the PMS was trying to charge them like $199 per location to integrate into the PMS. Yep. And their product was only being sold at $199. Right. And so they so financially we can't justify this.
Yeah. Yep. Right? That's what I ran into too.
Yep. That's a huge issue in itself.
So who can we talk about who this was and what software they were trying to integrate with and what exactly happened there? Or are we not allowed to say that yet?
We're going to gray out the names, but I'll tell you a little bit about what happened here. Okay. So this is a company that got creative, instead of going through the back end of the data on this cloud PMS, because you can't access it, right? What they did was they used what's called robotic process automation. So they went into the UI of what an end user uses and they accessed the data through that and pulled the data out of that for their own purposes. Well, as you can imagine, the PMS did not like that. Sent a notice to all of...
Isn't that a security issue?
It's a security issue because of the fact that you're doing it through the UI, and it depends on how they set it up. But the reality is if it's done well, it's as much of a security issue as if like an end user is using it too.
Okay.
Right? Like it's the same UI that they're using.
Got it. Okay.
Okay. So it's not huge issue to the PMS, but it could be an issue depending on how the third party built their integration.
Couldn't someone create a bot that is taking the information for not proper things they want to hurt people or steal people's information? Couldn't that happen? So it's
Totally.
this huge.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So that's why I'm saying it depends on kind of the structure of how it's built. And honestly, the likelihood of a bot doing it that way, it's a very slow and tedious and expensive process to build, to map out these PMSs and pull this data, et cetera, that a scammer is going to go a lot more different routes before they go this way from a nefarious perspective. So anyway, so what happened was this PMS shut this third party down, sent out a PR message to all of their customers and said, hey, by the way, you're using this third party that's not approved. And actually, you as a end user are in violation of our terms because you didn't put in the username and password. I mean, you gave them your username and password, which is against our terms.
Can we say what PMS it is?
No.
When can
Not
we?
yet.
Why can't we? And when can we? Because it ticks me off.
Well, yes. The reason why is because there is two sides of the story too. And I want to make sure that from the other side's perspective, that I understand their story. Yes.
Okay. So you're being responsible.
Because honestly, though,
I'll say this, Tanner. I exactly what it says in there and how we're framing this conversation. That's what we've ran into with who we're talking about. And I know we can't say the name yet, and everybody else I've talked to has the same story. So for me, it's like, it's clearly them, but I appreciate you being a responsible adult and doing your homework first.
The bigger issue in this is there needs to be like, and this I will take a stand on and say is true. The CARES Act has been published or pushed that says it is the ownership of the doctors for the data, right? But where these PMSs have gotten to in this gray area where they say, hey, by the way, we can still charge for this is, yes, they own the data, but we still own the structure in which the data exists. And that's what you're paying to access, not the data, right? And so there needs to be a lawsuit in court between a third party and the PMS to determine officially in court with a settlement of who can a PMS legally and rightfully charge for access to the data, right? And that's what I'm actually hoping that this process does, because they poked a bear, right? Like it's not a small company that they've blocked access to. And so I'm hoping that this leads to a public lawsuit where once and for all, there can be a determination of who financially and legally can a PMS charge to have access to this data. So ultimately, like what I also think is interesting is this is the part that you may not understand, Gary, is this company not only accessed it in a unique way, but they're also reselling their access to it. And so that's where it gets multiple, really even grayer.
Yeah, because that's even now you're not just trying to help your customers. You're taking that information to help yourself as well.
They're reselling their access to these other third parties and saying, hey, by the way, we're doing this right.
Yeah.
So that's why I'm saying we can't necessarily rip on the PMS.
Okay. But I have no problem calling out the other ones as well. Like I'll let's call everybody out.
So we want to have a conversation around who owns access to the data and is it legal to charge? Yes, we can call out everybody. But in this specific case, I don't think it's fair to rip on them only because there is a little bit more to the story that's not normal as far as like charging to get access to data.
Got it. Okay, cool. Awesome. Well, this is going to be exciting.
In the next PMS CEO conversation that I'm having, I definitely want to talk about ownership of data and access to it.
I wanted to repost the thing that you got and I wanted to tag some of these other PMSs and say, what's up with this? You know what I mean? Because they're going to have a unique perspective that you and I aren't thinking through, right? Like I had a very narrow perspective and then your perspective opened my eyes up a little bit more because you're like, okay, no, you don't just think of SMC, Gary. Think about these other companies that are resell because I just want access to the PMS so I can help my clients. That's it. That's all. I don't resell it. I don't want to make anything else off of it. That's all I want. And then, but you're like, no, there's another layer to this. But I think there's more to it than what even we realize.
if we can get that same letter, if that same letter exists for other third-party companies, then yes, I'd say let's go ahead and post it. But because of what this third-party company is doing, that's why I'm like, let's hold off, because I don't want to paint this company in a bad light when I'm not necessarily in disagreement with what they've done.
Yeah,
I find it fascinating in how they did it.
Yeah.
But
I love it.
In general,
Creative people.
Because they took a PR stance of like, we're going to be first movers and we're going directly to our customers to say this is not okay. And that's what I'm fascinated about. It wasn't just like, hey, we're going to give you a slap on the wrist. It was like, we're going straight to the source of your customers. And now all of a sudden there's this battle between, who are you more loyal to? Are you more loyal to this third party company, or are you more loyal to this PMS? Because it's so potential that the PMSs loses customers over this.
I love this podcast. This is so cool.
Isn't it fascinating?
It's so cool. I cannot wait to get more people on and start layering into this. We're just starting. I don't even know what episode we're on, but we're just starting, and the layers and because we don't have, a lot of podcasts have a financial investment, right? So it's like, oh, I got to get more customers, or I got to get sponsors. And we're just like, no, we're just going to dig into stuff that we're interested in that impacts our business, and it just there's layers to it. And so I'm learning so much.
Do you want to hear another fascinating, dirty marketing tactic that is being used in dental?
Yes.
And I'm not gonna name names on this one yet either. I think that there's a potential to do this in the future episodes.
The other one, I know the other two companies' names, so I'm just sitting here like, I want to. But we'll share them as soon. I'm going to share them as soon as Tanner says I can share them. Trust me, because I don't care. Like, but yes, go. I want to hear this story.
So, in a vertical within dental, there is let's just say kind of a legacy player who's been there a long time and has a lot of clout. And there are some new emerging players in this space that what the legacy player has done has created a unanimous review site where they have magically put themselves on top. It's not tied back to them, but if you go in and do the trail, you can actually see who created this review site. And they've gone through and put themselves on top, right? Best options, etc. And then they started blasting their competition. And the more competitive the competition is, the more that they've actually moved them down, right? So they're creating a very dirty, unethical, that if they got slapped with it.
Oh, well, how did you get slapped? That's actually age-old marketing tactics right there. So how would you get slapped?
It depends on the authenticity of the reviews. If they're making their own reviews and making their own negative reviews, then that's totally unethical.
They're making negative reviews about other companies on a platform that they made.
It's not like they've gone through and reviewed it themselves. It's like, hey, we have 500 reviews on this, and this is what it's out to. And the 300 reviews for this is like these, like they've only got 2 stars or whatever.
What kind of business is it?
They sell to dental.
So they're a vendor. Do they sell a service or a product?
Both. I mean, the industry sells both. Okay, so ultimately, the authenticity of the reviews is highly in question. I went through and I reviewed it myself, and I don't believe any of them.
Oh, you don't believe
them? I don't believe the reviews. No, like the things that they're saying, etc.
So what are you going to do? What are you going to do about it?
Create a good, authentic review platform. That's my. I mean, it's not. It doesn't impact me. It doesn't impact me. But
why can't we talk about it? Why can't we bring it up and say, "Hey, is this real? Does anybody know if this is real?"
Because the company that brought it to my attention doesn't want it to be further get more traction or more traffic, essentially, right? Like, because for us, the authenticity is in question, but it could be that other people go to it and they're like, oh no, I completely 100% believe in this, and therefore the people that brought it to my attention don't want a ton of traffic there. All of a sudden, they're getting raked across as coals because of these reviews that other people are believing that may or may not be authentic. Right. So for my respect out of them, I'm not going to bring up what it is or where it is, et cetera, until they've approved it. And then I'll come back and we can chat about that. But they probably won't approve it because of how they reacted with me. They said, hey, like, this is our previous experience. It's been absolutely ridiculous and devastating. And so because of that.
Because your product, so you brought up your product, and then let me explain to you what I've went through before.
Yes.
Is that right?
Not what we went through before, what we're going through. So it
I
exists.
wonder if I can
still
Google
out
it
there.
and find it. I wonder if I can Google and find it. That's what's going through my head.
Fascinating.
Yeah.
It's fascinating how dirty these techniques are getting. And it's not even like dental's that big. The potential of it is not like it's going to be absolutely game changing. We'll get there. I promise.
You were going to talk about it
There's
eventually.
one thing, Gary, that I am is very making sure that I'm loyal and telling the story straight.
Yeah.
So once they're okay with it, then I'll come out and we can talk about it in more detail.
Yeah, I'm just like, here, I'll post it on social media and see what everybody says about it, and then we'll sort it from there. And if people want to come and share their side of the story, I have tons of podcasts you can talk about it. So I appreciate it. You're much more mature than I am. Yeah, I had actually this happen at our boot camp. So the office came to it, the front desk or the hotel manager came to us and was like, "Hey, I just want to tell you what happened, and I don't want to lose your guys' business over it." And we're like, "Okay, no, we're good. Everything's gone really good. We're happy." What happened? She was like, someone wasn't happy with their room, and so they came. They were upset, so we upgraded them. But then their hotel their thing expired. They didn't accept the upgrade, and then their key expired because that's what time, at 1:00 or whatever, everything expires. And so they were locked out. The key didn't work, and so they came down and like cussed us out and like were very aggressive with our office staff. And then said, "I'm going to talk to the owners of the event and tell them they're never going to have the event here again because you guys did such a horrible job with this." And of course, they never brought that up with us. And so,
Right.
anyways, I just posted it.
If it impacted me and my company in a negative way, yeah, I'd totally be blasting it. But the fact that it's somebody else's company that may impact in a negative way.
Yeah. Well, see, now I had people call me out though, Tanner. They were like, "Did you get the other side of the story?" And I'm like, "Not yet. I'm working on it." And they were like, "Well, how can you post it?" And I was like, "Well, number one, I didn't call out the name. I had over 100 people at the event. It could have been anybody, right? But number two, it's never appropriate. Like if you didn't like did your room smell like cigarettes or it smelled like it was dirty? It's never appropriate to go cuss out somebody and then say, I'm going to tell Gary and use his company as leverage against that. There's no circumstance where that's appropriate. So that's why I posted it.
And I think and I agree with that. Like, I think that from a clarity perspective, like there is a black and white element to that. But for this other thing, there is a lot of like gray. Like, is these authentic or are they not? And so it's like, okay, well.
Same with the first example that you gave. You're not sure who the good or the bad guy is, or maybe they're both bad guys, or maybe they're both good guys, and we don't know yet. So we got to figure that out. I agree with that. That's good. This has been a good one, Tanner. Good job on this stuff. You should be like a private investigator.
Somebody calls me the other day. They're like, "Tanner, you're like Switzerland in dental." And I was like, I'll take that as a compliment.
Yeah, that is a compliment. Well, that's a good position to have for sure. Cool, man. All right. Well, great job today.
All right. Talk to you soon.